The alien warship drifted through the dark silence of space, its black metal hull glowing with faint red lights. Inside, the soldiers of the Zorak Empire celebrated their newest prize. They had captured a human. To them, it was a small victory, one more prisoner in an endless war of conquest. But the story did not begin with their victory. It began with a mistake. The humans were not well known across the galaxy. Some species thought of them as fragile, unimportant, a young race still finding its place among the stars. The Zorak Empire believed the same. They had crushed larger and older civilizations, burned planets to dust, and broken armies that had fought for centuries. To them, humanity was just another weak species waiting to be enslaved. So when their patrol ship detected a lone human scout vessel drifting near the edge of their territory, the Zorak commander did not hesitate. The order was simple: capture the ship, take the human alive, and bring him back for study. The attack was swift. Bright beams of alien energy cut across the darkness, striking the small human vessel. Shields collapsed, hulls cracked, and in only minutes the scout ship was dead. A single escape pod ejected into the void. But the Zorak warship caught it with magnetic clamps. Inside was the lone human they had hunted. He was young, dressed in the simple dark uniform of Earth's Space Command. His eyes were calm, too calm for someone who had just lost his ship and crew. The aliens dragged him into their metal corridors, chains around his wrists, weapons pressed against his back. He did not resist. He walked with steady steps, silent and watching. The soldiers laughed. To them, silence meant weakness. They expected fear, begging, maybe even tears. But the human said nothing. His eyes moved slowly from wall to wall as if he was memorizing the ship, every detail, every sound. Some of the younger soldiers began to feel uneasy. The human was locked in a glass cell at the center of the warship. Energy bars sealed him inside. The commander of the ship, a tall Zorak with scarred skin and black armor, stepped forward to inspect the prisoner. "So this is the great human race," the commander sneered, his voice deep and echoing. "One soldier, one fragile body. You will tell us about your people and then you will die." Still the human said nothing. He sat on the cold floor of his cell, eyes half closed as if in thought. Hours passed. The ship returned to its patrol route, engines humming through the corridors. Yet whispers spread among the crew. Strange things began to happen. A weapons system went offline for no reason. Lights flickered in long hallways. A storage bay door opened without command. The engineers found nothing wrong, but the timing of these failures made the soldiers nervous, and always. When a system failed, someone saw the human watching quietly from behind the glass, his lips moving as if whispering words only he could hear. The commander grew angry. "Tricks," he said. "Malfunctions happen. The prisoner does nothing." But when he turned back, the human was staring directly at him, calm and cold. At dinner that night, soldiers spoke of stories they had heard on distant worlds. Every time a human was captured, something terrible followed. Fleets vanished. Planets burned. Empires collapsed. The Zorak had laughed at those tales before. Now the laughter felt forced. The youngest soldier, his hands shaking, asked, "What if the stories are true? What if keeping him here is dangerous?" The commander silenced him with a glare. "Fear is for the weak. Humans are nothing. Tomorrow he will be interrogated. He will talk." But when the guards returned to the prison cell the next day, they found the human sitting cross-legged, his eyes open and sharp. He had not eaten. He had not moved. Yet the air around him felt different, heavy, alive, as if the silence itself carried weight. One guard stepped closer and hissed through the energy bars. "What are you waiting for, human? Why do you smile when your people are so far away?" The human finally spoke. His voice was quiet, steady, and colder than the void outside. "They are not far," he said. The guard froze. The words echoed in his mind long after he walked away. What did he mean? That night, more systems failed. The engines flickered, forcing the warship to drift powerless for several minutes. Alien soldiers whispered in fear. Some swore they heard footsteps in empty corridors, shadows where no one should be. And in his cell, the human smiled. The Zorak commander tried to push the fear aside, but it gnawed at him. He had seen many prisoners before from many races. All had broken under chains and weapons. None had stared back with eyes like this. None had smiled while surrounded by enemies. He ordered extra guards. He doubled the patrols. But no command could silence the unease spreading like fire among his soldiers. For the first time, The mighty Zorak commander wondered if capturing a single human had been a mistake. And deep in the silent cell, the human whispered a final word, too soft for the guards to hear. Soon. The Zorak warship was massive, a shadow drifting in the void. But inside its metal heart, the crew felt unease growing with each passing hour. They had captured many beings before, yet none had made the air feel so heavy. None had made silence so loud. The human sat in his cell, quiet and still, and the soldiers whispered about him like children speaking of ghosts. At first, the problem seemed small. A door that would not open, a light that refused to turn off. But then the failures became harder to ignore. The main engine flickered during a routine jump, leaving the ship stranded for almost 10 minutes. The commander barked orders and engineers swore they could find no cause. The ship was in perfect condition on paper. In reality, it was breaking apart piece by piece as if touched by something unseen. The soldiers began to connect the failures with the prisoner. Each time something went wrong, someone had noticed the human watching. His eyes followed the crew through the glass, calm, focused as if he knew exactly when the ship would shudder and groan. He never moved, never spoke, but his presence itself felt like a weapon. One soldier, younger than the rest, broke the silence one night in the mess hall. His voice shook as he asked, "What if the stories are true?" The older soldiers glared at him, but none dared to laugh. The stories had always existed, whispers traded in spaceports and border colonies. Stories of humans, not as weaklings but as curses. Armies that captured them vanished. Empires that enslaved them collapsed. Nobody knew how much was truth and how much was fear. But as they looked at the glass cell deep inside their warship, the stories no longer seemed so foolish. The commander would not allow weakness. He stood before his crew, voice sharp as steel. "Enough of these tales. A human is flesh and blood, nothing more. Fear is what kills you, not him. Tomorrow I will break him." But the commander could not silence the doubts inside his own mind. He too had seen the way the human stared back at him. Not with hate, not with fear, but with something colder. It was as though the human already knew the ending. That night, the guard on duty sat alone outside the cell. The human lay on the floor, eyes open, fixed on the ceiling. Hours passed, the guard trying to keep his eyes from drifting to the prisoner. But when he finally looked, he saw something that froze his blood. The human's lips were moving. Silent words formed again and again like a chant. The guard pressed his ear against the glass but heard nothing. Still he felt something. A vibration in the air like the hum of the ship itself was answering the human. He pulled back, shaking. "Stop that," he hissed, though he did not know why. The human turned his head slowly, eyes locking on the guard. He whispered one word, "Listening." The guard stumbled away, nearly dropping his weapon. He swore he could hear faint footsteps behind him in the empty corridor. When he turned, there was nothing. Only darkness. By morning, rumors had spread across the ship. Some said the prisoner was controlling the engines. Others claimed he was calling to something out in the stars. A few whispered that he had already escaped, and what sat in the cell was only a shadow. The commander roared with fury. "Fools, he is one man. One body. Chains hold him, walls bind him, and you tremble like children. I will speak with him myself." He entered the cell chamber, guards at his side. The energy bars glowed bright, trapping the human inside. The commander stepped close and growled, "Tell me what you know of your people. Tell me of your weapons, your fleets. Speak, or I will tear your mind apart." For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then slowly, the human sat up. His voice was steady, calm, with no fear. "You think chains hold me, but it is your empire that is bound, and the chains are breaking." The guards shifted uneasily, weapons trembling in their hands. The commander forced a laugh, but it rang hollow in his own ears. He tried to speak, but the ship itself interrupted. The lights went out. Alarms screamed across the decks. The sound of engines sputtering echoed through every corridor. The warship shook as if struck by some invisible force. Soldiers ran to their stations, shouting over one another. The commander turned sharply toward the human, and in the sudden red glow of emergency lights, he saw something that made his chest tighten. The human was smiling again. The commander barked orders, his voice louder than the alarms. "Regain control. Stabilize the core." But even as his crew worked, the ship groaned like a dying beast. Screens flickered, showing static. Communications failed. And in the distance of space, far beyond their sensors, something stirred. The human leaned forward, pressing one hand against the glowing bars of his cell. His eyes burned like cold fire as he whispered, "They are already here." The commander froze. "Who is here?" he demanded, though his voice cracked despite his armor. The human only repeated the words. "They are already here." Outside, in the endless dark, faint signals blinked across the void. The Zorak did not know it yet, but the first human warships had arrived at the edge of their empire. Silent, waiting, and aboard the captured vessel, the first true fear began to take hold. The Zorak commander stood in the control deck of his warship, furious at the chaos spreading across his ship. Systems had failed again, alarms screamed, and whispers of fear poisoned his soldiers. Yet through all the panic, one truth kept haunting him. The prisoner had spoken. "They are already here." The words repeated in the commander's mind like a curse. He tried to dismiss them, but his instincts, sharpened by years of battle, whispered that the human was not lying. Far away, across the dark stretch of the galaxy, Earth had already heard the news. A signal had escaped the Zorak's grasp, small, coded, impossible for alien machines to break. It was a message sent from the destroyed scout ship before its final breath. One word, taken, and that was enough. The halls of Earth's Fleet Command lit up with red lights. Admirals stood around holographic tables, faces grim, voices sharp. No one debated, no one asked for proof. Humanity had only one rule when it came to their kind: never leave one behind. Across the stars, massive ships stirred from their hidden stations. Battle fleets rose like giants from sleeping worlds. Engines burned, cutting through the void. Each vessel carried weapons the galaxy had never seen before. Weapons Earth had promised never to use, until one of their own was stolen. Back on the Zorak warship, the soldiers continued to work desperately, fixing engines, patching systems, trying to silence their own terror. But fear had roots now, growing deeper. Some swore they saw strange signals appearing on the long-range sensors. Faint blips on the edge of space, here and gone in seconds. Too far to confirm. Too close to ignore. One officer approached the commander with trembling hands. "Sir, our scans show..." "Something. Fleets, maybe, moving in patterns we cannot track." The commander snarled, "Ghost readings. Do not let that human's tricks cloud your judgment." Yet even as he said the words, the officer's eyes betrayed the same thought. They are coming. Meanwhile, inside his cell, the human prisoner sat quietly. His chains meant nothing. He did not speak to the guards, did not move when threatened. But at times, when the warship shuddered and alarms echoed, he closed his eyes and whispered a single phrase. "Hold on, we are near." The guards who heard him tried to deny it, but the words clung to them. They began to imagine fleets of shadow ships waiting just beyond their sight, ready to strike. On Earth, the first fleet commander spoke into the void, sending a message across space that burned through every frequency. It was short, simple, and carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken promises. Release him, or face extinction. The Zorak Empire laughed when they intercepted the transmission. To them, it was madness. One human, one prisoner. Entire empires had begged for mercy before, but the humans, these fragile creatures, dared to threaten annihilation. The message spread across the empire like a joke, but the laughter never lasted long, because soon border colonies fell silent. Outposts stopped responding. Patrol fleets vanished without distress calls. Something unseen was cutting through the Zorak's strength like fire through paper. On the warship carrying the prisoner, the commander tried to hide his unease. He ordered constant reports from nearby stations, but more often than not, the answer was the same: silence. His empire was going dark, one world at a time, and through it all the humans smiled. One night, as the commander passed the glass cell, he stopped. His anger had been burned away by something colder: doubt. He looked at the prisoner and demanded, "What are you? Why does your kind bring death wherever you go?" The human finally raised his head. His eyes shone with something beyond anger, beyond hate. It was certainty. "We are what you made us. You thought we were weak. You thought chains could break us, but you never understood. When you touch one of us, you call all of us." The commander felt his chest tighten, his mind screaming to deny it, yet the words carried weight heavier than any weapon. Moments later, the sensors screamed. The officer at the deck's front shouted, voice cracking, "Sir, Unknown contacts at the edge of the system. Hundreds, no thousands. They are surrounding us. The screens lit up with shapes that defied explanation. Human ships. Not crude, not weak. They were massive black silhouettes bristling with weapons that glowed like captured stars. Their engines shone blue-white, cutting through the void with terrifying silence. For the first time in his long life, the Zorak commander felt fear in his bones. The human prisoner whispered one last time, his voice calm and certain as the alarms filled the ship. "They told you to release me. Now they will show you what happens when you do not listen." The Zorak warship drifted helplessly in space, caught between fear and silence, and outside, the shadow of humanity had finally arrived. The Zorak warship trembled as the human fleet appeared on every screen. Hundreds of vessels, black and silent, surrounded the system. Their engines glowed like blue fire. Their weapons shimmered with power beyond alien understanding. They did not broadcast demands, did not send warnings. They simply waited. Inside the control deck, Zorak officers shouted over one another. "Shields up! Prepare weapons!" But their hands shook, their voices cracked. They had fought countless enemies before, but none had come with such silence. None had brought this heavy pressure, as if space itself bowed before them. The commander gripped the edge of his station. He had faced wars that lasted decades. He had burned worlds to dust. But never had he felt this. His eyes turned toward the prisoner, sitting calmly behind glass, as if the chaos around him was a story he already knew the ending to. The commander roared, "Fire on them! Show them Zorak strength!" Weapons lit up, great beams of red energy cutting through the void. But the human ships did not move. They did not dodge, did not scatter. The beams struck their hulls and vanished like water against stone. No damage, no reaction, only silence. Then the human fleet answered. A single shot came from one vessel. It was not loud. It was not bright. It was precise. The Zorak's forward cruiser exploded in silence. Its hull shattered into 1,000 burning pieces. The warship shook as alarm screamed again. The crew stared at the screen in horror. "One shot, one ship gone. They are testing us," an officer whispered, his voice weak. "They are showing us what they can do." Across the Empire, the pattern repeated. Human fleets moved like shadows through systems. Zorak defenses fired, screamed, begged the stars for mercy, but their weapons failed. Shields melted. Fleets disappeared. Worlds that once carried Zorak banners fell silent. Their skies burning with human fire. The empire that had lasted centuries began to fall in days. Back on the prisoner ship, the alien crew's whispers grew darker. They spoke of colonies destroyed, fleets erased without trace, leaders vanishing in the night. No world was safe. The humans moved with terrifying precision, as if they had been waiting for this moment all along. The commander tried to keep control. He barked orders, threatened his soldiers, forced them to obey. But fear was stronger than his voice. He saw it in their eyes. Even the most loyal did not believe anymore. And through it all, the human sat silent. Finally, the commander stormed into the prison chamber again, rage and fear battling in his heart. He shouted at the human, voice breaking. "Tell me how? How do your people do this? How do they destroy us so easily?" The human lifted his eyes, steady and cold. "You thought we were weak," he said. "You thought we were alone. But humanity is never alone. One of us is all of us. You should have learned that before you touched me." The commander's words died in his throat. For the first time, he understood this was not war. This was judgment. Moments later, the ship shook harder than ever before. Outside, human ships closed in, their weapons glowing brighter. The Zorak's defenses were gone, their fleet shattered, their empire burning. The officers screamed, "They are targeting us." Panic spread across the deck. Soldiers ran, some dropping weapons, others falling to their knees. The commander shouted orders no one followed. The walls shook, lights flickered, and the sound of human fire echoed like the voice of doom. In the cell, the human stood. The glow from the weapons outside lit his face, calm and certain. He pressed his hand against the glass and whispered words the guards could not forget. "This is the price of arrogance." And then the strike came. A beam of white fire cut through the void, striking the Zorak warship. The shields collapsed instantly. The metal screamed as it tore apart, explosions ripping through the corridors. Smoke filled the air. Alarms died one by one. The mighty warship that had once captured a human now crumbled like dust. But before the final blow, human ships moved with precision. Small craft docked with the Zorak hull, cutting through the burning metal. Soldiers in black armor stormed the corridors, moving faster than shadows. They did not fire wildly. Every shot was perfect, every step unstoppable. The guards outside the cell tried to resist, but it was useless. The humans cut them down, freed their prisoner, and saluted him as if he were a commander. The Zorak commander, bleeding and broken, fell to his knees. He watched as the human prisoner walked free, chains falling away like they had never mattered. The commander whispered, "Mercy, please." The human turned, his eyes colder than space itself. "Mercy?" he said softly. "You never offered it. And now it is too late." The human left with his people, and behind him the Zorak warship broke apart in silence. Across the stars, the Empire's flames burned brighter. Planets fell. Fleets died. An empire that once thought itself eternal was being erased piece by piece. And in every burning sky, the same message spread. Humanity had answered. And humanity would not stop. The Zorak Empire had ruled the stars for centuries. Their fleets were vast, their armies endless, their names spoken in fear. But now silence spread across their territories. World after world went dark. Fleets vanished without a trace. Their banners, once symbols of power, burned in the skies they had claimed. The human fleets moved like shadows, precise and merciless. They did not conquer, they erased. Each strike was swift. Each target chosen with cold calculation. Command stations, fuel depots, communication hubs gone in hours. The Zorak screamed into the void for help, but no one came. Their allies abandoned them, too afraid to stand in the way of humanity's wrath. On Earth, the order was clear. No surrender, no compromise. Humanity's law was simple. If you harmed one of them, you faced all of them. And for the Zorak, there would be no second chance. The captured human, once a prisoner in chains, now stood aboard the flagship of the human fleet. His eyes were hard, his voice steady as he reported to his commanders. He had memorized every detail of the Zorak warship, every weakness he had seen while in captivity. His suffering had become their downfall. The admirals listened in silence, then nodded. Their fleet spread wider, pressing deeper into Zorak space. No hesitation. No mercy. Back in the ruins of their empire, the Zorak commander who had once mocked the human prisoner now fled through broken corridors. His warship lay in pieces, his soldiers scattered. He had survived the first strike, but survival now felt worse than death. He watched as human fire rained across his colonies, as cities turned to ash, as proud warriors begged like children. He whispered to himself, "This cannot be real. They were weak. They were nothing." But even he no longer believed the words. In one final desperate act, the Zorak leaders gathered on their capital world. Their sky burned red as human fleets encircled the planet. From the great palace, the Emperor of the Zorak sent one last message to the humans. His voice shook, his pride broken. "Spare us," he begged. "We will release all your kind. We will give you our worlds. Only let us live." The reply came not from an admiral, not from a council, but from the very human they had captured. His voice carried through every channel, cold and final. "You had your chance. You thought mercy was weakness. You thought chains could hold us. Now you will learn what it means to face humanity. There will be no empire left to remember your name." And with that, the human fleets opened fire. The skies of the Zorak capital lit with white fire, brighter than any sun. Their great towers crumbled, their armies vanished. Their leaders burned in their own palace. The planet itself cracked under the weight of human weapons. Oceans boiling, continents shattering. The Empire's heart was gone in a single night. Across the galaxy, the few Zorak who survived could only watch as their star systems burned. Entire species had once feared the Zorak. Now they whispered of the humans instead. The word humanity became something more than a name. It became a warning. On the bridge of the human flagship, silence fell as the last transmission from the Zorak capital faded into static. The admirals turned to the prisoner, the man whose capture had brought all this. He stood tall, no longer a victim but a symbol of what it meant to be human. The commander of the fleet spoke softly, almost with reverence. "Do you wish to give the order to end it?" The human closed his eyes for a moment, remembering the chains, the mocking voices, the arrogance of those who had thought him powerless. Then he opened them again, steady and calm. "Finish it." The human fleets moved with one final strike. The last Zorak strongholds, scattered and weak, fell within hours. No world was spared. No fleet survived. An empire that had once stretched across the stars was gone. wiped from history in less than a month. When it was over, the humans did not stay. They did not claim the ruins, did not raise their banners on conquered worlds. They left only silence and ash. But before they vanished back into the dark, they left one final message carved into the stars, broadcast across every frequency, in every language the galaxy could hear. It was simple. Only 7 words. Do not touch what is ours. The galaxy trembled. Races who had once mocked humans now spoke of them in whispers. They were no longer seen as fragile, no longer dismissed as weak. Humanity had shown its true face. Unyielding, merciless, unstoppable. And deep within the ruins of their empire, the few surviving Zorak understood the truth too late. By capturing a single human, they had doomed themselves. The story would be told for generations, passed in whispers across spaceports and colonies. Not as myth, not as rumor, but as warning. When you see a human, do not raise your hand. Do not take what is theirs. Because if you do, the extinction of the Zorak would be the answer forever.